My name is Hart Viges. I joined the Army right after September 11th and asked for airborne, asked for infantry. Ended up with 82nd Airborne Division, 1st 325 HHC, Battalion Mortars, hundreds in the sky, death from above. And went in November 2001 and left the Army in December 2004. I was deployed to Kuwait in February 2003 and subsequently was part of the invasion in March. Originally we were going to jump inside Baghdad airport, but Third ID was ahead of schedule, so we drove in and secured this town that was hitting the supply line. It's a town called Osamawa. This was my first experience with the job that I was trained to do. You know, I was a mortarman, 81 millimeter mortar. We were set up outside the town of Osamawa in basically a dump. Flies were so heavy you couldn't eat. When the sun was up, you'd eat a mouthful of flies with your MRE pudding. But what I saw there, you know, more so even what I participated in, you know, hearing the radio calls over for the line companies that are in trouble, or they spot some people go into a building. So we get that fire mission and we destroy the building with our mortars. I set the timers, I set the rounds, the charges for the mortars. I was part of that team that sent those rounds downrange. And, you know, this isn't army to army, you know. People live in towns. It's beyond imagination to think that normal people, civilians, don't live in towns. This is upside down thinking. So I never really saw the effects of my mortar rounds in the towns. So that just leaves my imagination open to countless deaths that I don't know how many civilians, innocents I've killed, helped kill. Another big piece of weaponry that they used on this little town of Osamawa was called a Spectre gunship. It's a C-130 with belt-fed howitzer cannons, 2 of those, and some like super Gatling guns. I wouldn't know the proper nomenclature for that. And they would sweep around Osamawa, just pounding the city. And this is definitely a sight to be seen, this airplane. I mean, it's almost, even though the rounds are coming from up in the sky, it's almost like the ground is shaking. And again, over the city, over neighborhoods, Kiowa attack helicopters with their Hellfire missiles. You know, F-18s dropping bombs that would shake you to the bone. All the while I was laying down mortar fire on this town full of people. And the radio was always never a good thing came over the radio. One time they said that to fire on all taxi cabs because the enemy was using them for transportation. And in Iraq, any car can be a taxi cab. You just paint it white and orange, and there you have it. And one of the snipers across the radio replied back, excuse me, did I hear that right? Fire on all taxi cabs? And the Lieutenant Colonel replied back, like, you heard me, trooper, fire on all taxi cabs. And once that conversation ended, the town pretty much lit up. All the units that were in there fired on numerous cars. Again, people. Where's the real proof? This was my first experience with war. That really kind of set the tone for the rest of the deployment. Then I went to Fallujah for a couple of weeks, and our Charlie company picked a fight there, and so we had to skip out. My Fallujah story is not like other Fallujah stories. I was out in this resort area that got stripped up, that we took over, and had my weapon 30 meters away from me working on my tannin in a man-made lake. But hearing the stories come back from inside town. And then we went to Baghdad and pretty much ran that town into the ground. There was no real structure there, no police, no authority except for us, and we took full advantage of that in the treatment of the people, and just overall viewpoints. I mean, myself, I never really considered myself a racist person, but everything was Haji this, Haji that, Haji smokes, Haji burger, Haji house, Haji clothes, Haji rag. Haji's the same as honky. It's the same thing, but I had to catch myself. And then with raids, we never went on a raid where we got the right house, much less the right person. Not once. We were outside of Baghdad, this water treatment plant. And it seemed like a pretty nice area, trees, green. But then, as we were leaving, two men with RPGs run out in front of us in the road. And there's a lot of yelling and screaming. And they holded themselves with women and children that were there, and we're all screaming, drop your weapon, drop your weapons. They had RPGs slung on their backs. And I was watching my sector on the left. They were on the right. I was very adamant about watching my sector over there. But I just couldn't take it anymore, and I swung my rifle around, had my sight on the dude in the doorway, RPG on his back, had my sight on his chest. This is what I'm trained to do. But when I looked at his face, he wasn't a boogeyman. He wasn't the enemy. He was scared and confused. Probably the same expression I had on my face during the same time. He was probably fed the same BS I was fed to put myself in that situation. But seeing his face took me back. And I didn't pull the trigger. He got away. We get back up with Apache helicopters, barely fighting vehicles, and we go back into this nice little village asking questions. And it's a pretty good history in Iraq. If you got beef with your neighbor back in Saddam's day, you just say, hey, police, they said something bad about Saddam. Why don't you go get them? And they take them and they torture them. Well, now here with the U.S., we're asking who are the troublemakers, and we hear from the people in the village that these people are troublemakers over here. So we go, and myself and another soldier steps off, and we toss the hut. Well, the only thing I find is a little .22 pistol, not AK-47s, not RPGs, not pictures of Saddam, not large caches of money. But we end up taking the two young men regardless. And I looked at my sergeant and I was like, Sergeant, these aren't the men that we're looking for. And he told me, don't worry. I'm sure they would have done something anyways. And this mother, all the while, is crying in my face, trying to kiss my feet. And, you know, I can't speak Arabic. I can speak human. She was saying, please, why are you taking my sons? They have done nothing wrong. And that made me feel very powerless. You know, I was 82nd Airborne Division Infantry with Apache helicopters, fighting vehicles, and my armor, my M4. I was powerless. I was powerless to help her. And I was very naive back then. I thought that, you know, they would just take them and find out, yeah,